Welcome to Herbally Yours, an adventure into the world of natural medicine. Here is your host, Dr. Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse who will help you take the leap to ultimate wellness.
And thank you so much. Greetings. And we love when you join us. This is Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, for another edition of Herbally Yours, right here on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Herbally Yours brings you the latest information about the many facets in the world of natural living. And as you know, I'm a nurse, the natural nurse, and I really love nursing. I think there's so much that is so wonderful about nursing. But it's really great to be able to focus on natural remedies and bring in the healing concepts of nursing. So I am so happy to have on board as our guest today another natural nurse. Her name is Susan Allison-Dean. And Susan is board certified advanced holistic nurse, certified in clinical aromatherapy, and the founder of the Nature Nurse, and you can find her there at thenaturenurse.com. She has been a nurse for nearly 30 years, practicing as a clinical nurse specialist at Yale-New Haven Hospital and Yale-New University for her early career, and then she transitioned to holistic nursing. Her path into natural living led her to expand her knowledge of horticulture, including working at a garden center and doing an organic internship at High Grove Estate, which is the private home of Prince Charles. She explored Caribbean islands where she got to know whales and dolphins personally in the wild and recognized them as sentient beings. Today, she is reaching people through her organization, The Nature Nurse. And again, the website is thenaturenurse.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, Susan.
Hello, Dr. Kamhi. I really appreciate being here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, that's fine. I'm happy to have you. Now, let's go back a little bit in time and talk about, what path led you to become a nurse?
Well, as I started out in high school, I actually wanted to be a marine biologist. And my mother, who was of the era of practicality, didn't see the vision. She didn't think it was practical. And I understand why. Back in that time, women, in her perspective, she wasn't college educated, so she didn't have the perspective that we have for women today. But she felt that I should be a nurse. And so I love science. I love people. So that's the path I chose to take. And that led, once I got into nursing, like you were talking about, nursing offers so many opportunities and so many avenues that it's almost infectious once you start to get into it. And you see the opportunities and the room to grow and the educational opportunities. I think many of us end up starting somewhere and moving in different directions through our career. And I was fortunate to start out as a wound ostomy continence clinical nurse specialist at Yale, where I loved working with the ostomy patients. They were so inspiring. And then, but that for me and for many nurses, after a certain amount of time, sometimes being overexposed to that level of trauma and difficult situations can wear on you. And eventually I started to get what I call an internal nudge. And I think, Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker, says when there's enough pushes and enough pulls, you make a change in your life. And for me, the pulls were starting to feel like I was ready to do something different. And I started to get a pull towards gardening. And at the same time, my mother got a terminal illness, and, she actually was given 3 months, but ended up living 2 years, which was a blessing, but it was also very difficult for those who are home caregiving for relatives and loved ones. I think firsthand that it's not easy to be the caregiver. And so I was a caregiver at home. I was a caregiver at home with my family and then going to work and caregiving. So when she died, and subsequently we had 2 other deaths in the family. So long story short, I think that was my push, that I felt like I'm done with caregiving right now, and I needed to resign and take a break and go this new gardening path. And that's kind of how it all started to transition for me more into this holistic realm, which I'm so grateful that we have holistic nursing. I think it's really should be the foundation for all of our nursing practices.
Well, it really has some tenets, I believe, that are about health and wellness. And so many nurses got into the field because they're interested in health and wellness. But in conventional medicine, it gets depressing if all you're doing is giving people medication. Sometimes they don't even need it. For instance, I have, unfortunately, been on call at times or on staff, and we had to give sleep medication even though someone was sleeping. We had to actually wake them up to give them a sleeping pill because that's how an order was written.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And even, back to my mother example, like I said, they gave us 3 months for her to live. So, we didn't think twice about bringing her home and caring for her. But she didn't take it, go for any treatment. And I really believe it was the love and just the, making home dinners, and, we're able to keep her alive. And, she had some suffering, but at one point she went to the Caribbean with my brother. I mean, she ended up living 2 years without any treatment. And I'm sure as you talk to all your listeners, this isn't medical advice here. We're just sharing our stories and experiences, and through that, maybe we all learn. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't go for conventional treatment by any means, but it's just interesting. I mean, they didn't even offer her anything, and so it's not like she refused it. There just was nothing at the time for her. So you just never know. And I think that one of the things that's great about holistic nursing as well is the strong spiritual component of it. And as I look back, and I have friends now who have family members being diagnosed or, all kinds of diseases. And I always say to them, listen to your medical people and, listen to what they're telling you that the science shows. But don't let anyone tell you how long someone's going to live, because that, I believe, is between the person and God, and should never be dictated when that's going to happen.
And that's so often the case. Now, we both know Florence Nightingale, who was certainly a well-known nurse. I would say everyone in our audience, even if they are not nurses, probably heard of Florence Nightingale because she actually was quite well known. And she actually was a nature person. She always said nature alone heals. And what she taught was for people for nurses to make patients comfortable and take away the impediments to allowing the body to heal itself. And in addition, there's an entire archive of a whole compendium of herbal remedies that she was known to use.
Wow, that latter part I was not familiar with. That's really fascinating. And, it's interesting because, here she talked about nature early on, and yet, I don't really remember in my my baccalaureate program or being taught to integrate nature into my care plans for my self-care or my patient's care. And, as time has gone on in our modern society, we are getting more and more away from that nature element, whether it be our, temperature-managed homes, cars, businesses, grocery store, we go in and out. And, when I started early in nursing in the hospital, you could at least open the windows and get some fresh air in. You can't even do that anymore. I remember one time at Yale when I had a patient who had been there for quite a while, and it was a beautiful day. And I said to him, would you just like to go outside? Because, I could see he was really starting to slide into a depression. And to be honest with you, I was craving to get outside myself. And so he said, oh, my God, I would love to. And we got a wheelchair, and I took him outside and just rolled him out the front door and let his face sit in the sunshine. And you would think that he won the lottery. He couldn't thank me enough that day. He said that was the best intervention anyone had done for him since he had been there, and it was just that simple.
Well, that's interesting. Now, I know that also you have some great projects going on, which we're going to share. But I'd like to tell you listeners that you are listening to Herbally Yours on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ellen Kamhi, the natural nurse, and my guest today is also a nurse. She is Susan Allison-Dean, and you can find her at thenaturenurse.com. So, Susan, you're doing a lot of really interesting projects, and one of them is an involvement with the healing capacity of water and what you call Blue Mind. So what is Blue Mind? And let's talk about the healing capacity of water.
Well, since you're out there in Long Island, I'm probably preaching to the choir on this, but when we go to the water, whether it be on, in, near, or underwater, we get into a very peaceful state of mind. And the person who kind of really brought this to our forefront is Dr. Wallace J. Nichols, who is actually a PhD turtle researcher. And he put together this and studied it with some neuroscientists because he was really intrigued with the concept of water and how it affects us, not cognitively, emotionally, and spiritually, which was a big leap to go out as a turtle researcher. But he's really created a following. He has a book called Blue Mind. People can check it out. But what fascinated me when I read his book is I just felt it was so validating, is he put into words what I have experienced and felt when I personally have been on, near, or underwater. And especially in my grieving period, how restorative and healing it was. And, my family, we joke that it's the place you go to reset yourself. And what's fascinating is that the concept of using water for healing is even being used with veterans with their PTSD. And I don't know about you, but if it can help our veterans, and thank God there is something that is helping them, imagine what it can do for the rest of us. So we have, Dr. Nichols and I have been talking, and we've met, and we've done some, gone to some events together, including, I was recently invited to the New York City. They did a premiere debut for a documentary that was halfway done at the time, but they wanted to preview it. And it was done by a team called Force Team Blue. And what they are is veteran special ops divers who are now working in collaboration with marine biologists to restore coral reefs because they're applying their diving skills and the knowledge of the marine biologists. And so even they were recently involved after Hurricane Irma down in Florida, where the reefs were broken apart and all kinds of things, and these guys have like zero body fat. They're just amazing. They still keep themselves in amazing shape. But they are down there restoring the reefs with scientists, and they're also healing themselves, and they have an opportunity to come back together and be a mission again, but they're doing a mission for good. And so through the documentary, and I will definitely be posting on my social media when the documentary is public, and because it is such a moving film. And I think things like this, that if we can incorporate this type of natural healing more into our Western medicine philosophies, we would really save money, have less drug use, ease tension. And for me, my focus I really want to be is on preventive health and wellness. So, for example, just being able to get kids away from video games and their phones. I don't know if you saw recently, the World Health Organization just announced that it plans to add gaming disorder and hazardous gaming to its list of mental health conditions. And this is something that we didn't know when we started. I have friends who have kids who are in college now. They say the worst thing they ever did was introduce their kids to